the approach to Street Fighter 6, at least as far as the music is concerned, is extremely different than anything else that we've seen in Street Fighter in the past, right? The music has normally been very programmatic, which just means, like, you know, there's a melody that represents everything. It's been very straightforward. However, the approach to music in Street Fighter 6 is extremely different. The approach to old Street Fighter music has been very simple in the sense of the melody represents the character, right? So we know the characters and we know the character's melody, so anytime we're walking around and we hear that melody, we know which character is about to show up on screen. A big example of that is Ryu's theme. And this has been the same since, like, right, this has been the same for it's been the same for 30 years, right? So Expressionism in art is, everybody's seen this piece of art before, I'm sure. Expressionism in art is essentially just taking an idea and showcasing it, right? It's very simple. We can tell what's happening. This is a lady in a white dress, probably getting married, right? This is a groom, something. This is someone getting scared, right? The screaming man. This is what looks like Marilyn Monroe, right? Like that. It's very clear. The idea of it is extremely clear, and we can tell what it is just by looking at it, right? This is the idea behind Street Fighter 2, 4, and 5's music, right? We have the clear melody. We can tell what it is when we listen to it. With Street Fighter 6 and Third Strike, as we just noticed, they're taking a different approach, and they're doing impressionism. This is impressionist art, where the art itself, there's not a lot of details, but your brain fills in the details that are missing, right? Like, for example, here, let me get the epic pen out. Like, for example, like, there's not any detail here, but we can tell that this is somebody rowing a boat, right? Like, we can tell that this is water, right? Right, like, there's zero detail to this, but we can infer, our brain fills in all of the missing pieces, right? Like, we can tell this is a mast of a boat, right? It's a fucking boat, right? Like, we can tell this is probably, like, what would be a dock, right? Like, this is the shit that is impressionism in art. So the Starry Night is another great example of impressionist art, right? Like, we can't quite tell what, like, if you're looking at it from far away, you can't quite see what it is, or there's not a lot of details here, rather, but our brain fills it in, right? We see that this is the moon, we see these are stars, right? We can tell these are probably clouds, this is probably a mountain of some kind, and then there's, like, some lines. Granted, like, this is not as impressionist as some other pieces would be, probably because Van Gogh came later, but, like, you can see that, like, you can tell what certain things it are, like, right? Like, these are mountain ranges. You can tell what they are, but our brain has to do the work. Like, this here is perfect, right? Again, not a lot of detail. We can't even see, like, where the bank is, but we can infer these are some bushes. We can infer that this is probably, like, a riverbank. We can infer these are trees, clouds, right? Like, our brain fills in all of the details that are not there. That is the approach that Street Fighter 6 is taking, right? So there is a piece of music by Claude Debussy. Claude Debussy was an impressionist musician, and it is essentially the exact same philosophy, right? So it's the same thing, right? Like the Street Fighter 3 music we heard, this, like, the melody isn't quite as clear. It's a little bit more loosey-goosey. However, our brain fills in the stuff that's not there. It's less so of it representing something, and it's more of representing an idea, or, like, a concept that's a little bit more complex, right? So, like, for example, this is called Le Cathédrale Anglotie. It's a French piece. Claude Debussy's French. It's known as the Sunken Cathedral, right? So, like, the whole part is, like, the bubbles going up, right? Like, that's why the music is always like, right? And, like, the cathedral itself underwater is, like, very majestic, right? So, like, it's representing big ideas without without like the clear indication of it, right? Like it represents ideas rather than something. This is what Street Fighter is doing, right? So again, this would be like the expressionist version of Ryu's music, right? Right? Clear melody. We know this is Ryu. But if we look at Street Fighter 6's music, again, it's no clear melody, right? It's more representing the idea of Ryu, right? Where he's like this very stoic, like very like strong individual. The crazy thing is this is taking this impressionist idea and putting it through the vision of the 70s and 80s hip hop culture, which is awesome. So like this is the idea of Ryu instead of it just being Ryu, if that makes any sense. Specifically too, like Chun-Li is a perfect example of this, right? Like Chun-Li's a perfect example of this because this theme, to me, and like the way my brain is interpreting it, is water, right? Like it's got like the Chinese hits, right? Like the dun, 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 which is very Chun-Li, right? Because she's Chinese, I think, right? I hope I'm not wrong. But like the whole idea is like it's very like the atmosphere of it feels very water to me, right? And she fights Wing Chun, which is, you know, Bruce Lee, be water, my friend. Her colors are blue, right? Like to me that's like so representative of like what Chun-Li is as an idea instead of just being Chun-Li, right? Like this like to me that represents the idea of Chun-Li, and this just represents Chun-Li. Right. See, so there's bits and pieces of the old theme, right, where we have the dun, 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 dun. And it's putting this all through that like 70s, 80s hip hop groove, right? Because you have like the syncopation, the groove with it, right? And this is why I really love Street Fighter 6 music. Is it's all about the idea, your brain, like you have to know the subject before you can listen to the music, kind of, right? Oh, perfect, Lily, right? Like let's take a look at Lily. So what do we know about Lily? She is native Thunderfoot tribe, right? But like she's very fast. She seems like she's a very happy person, right? Like very native, like native, like Latin feel, right? Right, like this all makes so much sense. And to me, because our brains have to do a little bit more work piecing things together instead of just getting a straight up melody, this makes me like this stuff more. What's another character theme we can look at here? Zangief. Huge Russian powerful wrestler guy. Bah. Like, think of like Godzilla walking into a place. Right? Right? It's the fact that it's representing the idea of who these characters are. And then putting it in that hip hop, like behind, like in the hip hop perspective, right? I think one person I haven't heard, I don't think I've heard Honda's theme yet. Okay, Honda's theme is a little bit different. It invokes a more complex, maybe emotion or like feeling, right? And hilariously enough, it's exactly what Max's experience is, right? Like I watched Max's video a little bit and he was talking about how he doesn't necessarily like the music, but it's because it's different and people went through this with Street Fighter 3. And it's because the music, again, it's not the same music we've known for 30 years, right? It's not representative of the character. Well, it's not representative of Honda. It's representing like the idea of Honda's story, right? And my favorite thing was this clip that I saw here, and I think Jorge clipped this out, and I think this kind of sums up everything that I've been talking about, and it sums up what Street Fighter's music is trying to get across. So,
you know what I'm seeing when I'm listening to this part of the song? I'm seeing Honda on the ground doing this shit. He's like this, and he's not moving. He's just fucking waiting. He's just sitting there, waiting for you to jump or walk forward, just sitting there patiently.
See, like the idea of Honda downcharging, right? Like this is like that's what the fucking like that's the point, and it's amazing, and I love the way they did it. And the fact that Max is like kind of picking up on it, that it like represents more the idea, and like he's seeing these visuals and like these situations. That's the shit, and that's what Impressionist art is all about. That's what Impressionist art is all about. I wonder if Max has other.
That's the feeling it gives right now.
See,
something
talking
like,
about feeling.
Something like I'm fed up, right? Where he's like an expert of his craft, but he's fed up. Yeah, this is great, dude. Okay, this one's fucking good, because now it's got like, but the fire still burns.
See, the idea, it's the idea of the music, and I love the fact that Max is picking up on it, and he like took the time to go through it. It's fucking awesome. Impressionist art, great shit. I'm a big fan of Impressionist art. The fact that Street Fighter 6 is bringing it to Street Fighter, it's making things a little bit more fleshed out, in my opinion, just by applying like this kind of philosophy to music through the perspective of like the 70s and 80s stuff. Fucking beautiful. Fucking beautiful. This is why I love Street Fighter 6 music. And I like this stuff a lot better than I like Street Fighter 5 music, I'll say it. I wasn't a big fan of Street Fighter 5's music.